Okay, well, thank you everybody for attending. Some of you may have seen versions of this presentation previously, but I think I've tried to incorporate some new information in there as well. So there should be something of interest for everyone. So the presentation will look at the concept of Humipak and how and why it was developed, how it can help users to comply with guidance and best practice, a little bit about the design of the pouch and how it works, and then looking at the ways that we advise that products are handled in Humipak, and a little bit about the benefits. Westfield Medical have been manufacturers of sterile barrier systems for well over 50 years now, and have developed along that over that time lots of sterilization pouches, barrier materials, and also sealing technology. So we've been providing products that have gone into sterile services departments, mainly focused on the output from the department in terms of sterile instruments. But we then used that knowledge to help some of the inputs to the sterile services department with Humipak, which offers an opportunity to make the cleaning of instruments easier and more effective. In the UK, which is where the product was developed, there were some guidelines introduced around keeping used instruments in a moist environment, with the key point of that being that the decontamination process is much more effective when any soils and residues are not allowed to dry onto the surface of the instruments. This also helps to reduce the risk of transmissible infections from proteins and prions that are attached to the surface. So the design of the product, so we've used established medical grade materials. So these are materials that are already used within sterile barrier systems. The use of medical grade materials means that we don't have any compatibility issues with any medical devices. They're well proven technology. The film is a multi-layer laminate material, which offers a low water vapor transmission rate, and that's important in order to maintain a humid environment inside the pouch over a long period of time. Typically, some users may use a polyethylene bag for a similar purpose. The material that's used in the Humipak pouch has a vapor transmission rate of around a third of that of a standard polyethylene bag, which means that it will lose far less moisture over a period of days. The inner layer is a highly absorbent material, but the purpose of it in this application is really the ability to spread the water rapidly over the surface of the inner layer. This means that the high surface area allows rapid transfer from the liquid to the vapor phase, so creating a high level of water vapor within the air, which is what helps to maintain the non-drying state of the residues. When the recommended amount of water is added to the pouch, it covers around 2/3 of the surface area of the pouch, which means that there's also then still further absorption capacity of the pack, so that any wet residues that may be on the instruments will be absorbed by that layer, and any liquid will then be retained within the pouch. It's not going to run out when the pouch is opened. The actual amount of water that's needed to create a high level of humidity is actually very small, but we state recommended water volumes on each of the packs, and this allows for the kind of the unknowns when the pack is loaded with some soiled instruments, so unknown quantities of contamination, unknown size and quantity of instruments. But typically you only need a small amount. The density of water in the liquid phase is about 1600 times that in the vapor phase. So a very small amount of liquid water creates a very large amount of water vapor, which is why the process with Humipak is so effective. So drawing on some of the sterilization pouch technology, and particularly with self-seal pouches, Humipak has a self-adhesive closure. This means that you get a continuous airtight seal, and if it's airtight, that means it's also going to be moisture tight for retaining the humidity. The fact that you have a flat continuous seal means that there's no leakage path. Whereas if you have a bag that is tied with a cable tie or a knot or a Ziploc type closure, there are paths for moisture leakage in that. The key point really for users is that there's no need to use any chemicals with Humipak in order to prevent the drying of the residues on the instruments. The power comes from the water vapor. The benefit of having a full moist environment for the instruments rather than something that is a surface treatment is that it will actually penetrate every surface and access every surface of that instrument. It's very difficult to achieve that with sprays, gels, those kind of products. Typically, when they're used, you'll get the upper surface of the instrument that is covered, but it's very difficult to cover the whole surface, and particularly into box joints, lumens. With water vapor, you don't have any surface tension issues that can limit wetting out onto any of the surfaces, so it does penetrate fully into joints. And because you've got no chemicals, there are no compatibility issues with washer disinfector detergents or other materials, so you don't need to make sure that the chemicals are eliminated before it goes into the washer disinfector process. So when the pouch is sealed, water molecules will start to move from the liquid phase to the vapor phase, and that's what creates the high humidity in the pack and maintains the moist environment. This happens because water will always move from high concentrations to low concentrations, so it tries to reach an equilibrium in terms of the moisture saturation. With a lumen device or an endoscope, if the inside of the lumen is wet, then the water molecules will migrate outwards if they're in an ambient or dry condition. So this results in the lumen drying out. If they are within the surrounding air that has an equal or higher concentration of water, then that process is prevented and the inside of the lumen remains moist. Similar principle if you have an endoscope in a tray, even with the polyethylene covers that are used there. The covers, typically the red ones that will be used for the used instrument, is a thin polyethylene material that doesn't stop the loss of moisture from the scope. It might slow it down a little bit, but it certainly doesn't stop it. By placing that tray inside the Humipak pouch, then all of that movement of water from the scope and out of the scope tray is prevented and probably reversed with the humid air within the pouch increasing the moisture content within the tray itself. So this is how the principle works on long cannulated or lumen devices. So to illustrate the effectiveness of moisture retention, we devised a test, and this was using a small amount of water, so less than specified for the sizes of pouches that we tested. A humidity data logger was placed inside the pouch along with a dummy load, so that we had an airspace within the bag, as there would be if there were a tray or instrument set inside, but wouldn't actually contribute itself to the humidity levels. So we added 20 millilitres of water, stored the pouches for 1 week at room temperature, and also included a control sample without water. And Despite the small volume of water used, all three of the larger Humipak sizes maintained a humidity level of over 90% within a few hours, and remained at over 90% for 168 hours, 7 days. So this shows the effectiveness of the Humipak system, so the materials and the sealing system, in preventing moisture loss from the pack, and that's clearly going to keep those instruments in a moist condition. For comparison, we carried out a similar test, but rather than the water being introduced onto the inner layer of the Humipak, it was introduced on a saturated sponge. In this case, the humidity rise was much slower than it is with the way that we intend Humipak to be used. It didn't reach the same high levels, nor did it remain above 90% for 3 days. This indicates that when you're using something like a sponge or a wet towel will give a similar effect, the water molecules are restricted by that substance and aren't able to make the transition into the vapor phase. And therefore it inhibits the effectiveness of the water in the system. There have been some external studies, an independent study carried out on Humipak, the most prominent one of which was carried out by a team from Southampton University under the supervision of Professor Bill Keevil. They looked at Humipak, a plastic bag with a tied top, and sets being left in air. They had a test protocol to assess the absorption of soils onto the surface of the instruments and the presence of those soils after cleaning. So they carried out the sample for the test for a 24-hour period, and then cleaned the samples. The observations were that Humipak maintained a constant humidity, which none of the others processes did. Only Humipak maintained an environment which reduced protein absorption onto the surface of the instruments. And after 24 hours in Humipak, they were seeing results equivalent to only 15 minutes in the other conditions. And the report stated that Humipak demonstrates a cheap, easy to implement solution to improve surgical instrument reprocessing and to potentially reduce associated hospital-acquired infections. There have also been some studies carried out by our US partner, who have carried out 2 studies to verify that Humipak keeps contamination moist and easily removable. The first of these used a number of instruments, including some difficult to clean features. They stored these for up to 5 days, and along with a control. A control sample dried very quickly, and the Humipak samples remained moist and could be removed easily for that whole 5-day period. They then also looked at cannulated devices, this time for 3 days, with soils enclosed in the lumen. This was slower to dry out than a flat sample, but was much more difficult to remove when it did. Again, Humipak maintained the moisture and allowed the soiling to be removed easily from those samples. But in terms of actual practical experience within our current customer base, so in the UK, we've got some UK NHS trusts that regularly use Humipak for scopes and for instrument sets. One of those carried out an empirical study on caesarean section instrument sets. So these are sets that are renowned for becoming heavily soiled. They're often used out of hours and therefore maybe do not get reprocessed immediately after use. So on this study, they found that with the sets stored in Humipak, typically in the pre-rinse process, it took around 3 minutes to pre-clean the instrument set, and that was with a rinse, very little scrubbing. When the similar sets were pre-cleaned without Humipak, it took over 14 minutes. It was difficult to remove some of the soiling, and there was a lot of scrubbing of those instruments required. So this represents a significant time saving within sterile services, and that in turn allows them to maybe reallocate those resources and increase productivity within the department. Just some statistics from the UK in terms of the extent of the benefit that this potentially would give. So there are approximately 50,000 births per month in England and Wales, and this is the data from 2022. And approximately 31% of those births involved C-section. So that's over 15,500 C-sections per month. So if we take a slightly more conservative view of the time saving, if Humipak is used and call it 10 minutes a set, that's over 2,500 hours per month of cleaning time that could be removed from that process. So outside of the UK, the USA is currently the largest market of Humipak. So they were early adopters. They've been using it for over 10 years now. And as you can see from the slide, there are significant numbers of this product being used. One case study there's a hospital that had a history of high C-section infection rates. So Humipak formed part of their strategy to reduce the rate of infection, and was considered by the staff there to be a significant part of the success of that process. There were other procedural changes and things as well, but the opinion was that without Humipak, they wouldn't have been able to reduce the infection rates in the way that they did. So within the US, the main reason for the use is to prevent drying, which is the thing that we've focused on so far. But the secondary reason that it's used is to isolate potential biohazard materials. So when the instrument sets are placed within the pouch, any potential biohazard material, any infectious material is contained within that pouch and is not then open to the air. So when the packs are being transported through the hospital or between units, then the risk of any sort of ambient transmission of infection is eliminated. So a little bit on the handling of Humipak. Firstly is to recognise there is a potential for bacterial growth. This is one of the questions that has been asked as long as Humipak has been in use, is that if you've got infectious material on the instruments and you put that in a humid pack, then that's an ideal environment for bacterial growth. Yes, it is. That is very unpredictable in terms of what that might be. We did have a study commissioned to try and assess the amount of bacterial growth, but it's so dependent on the strains of bacteria that are present, the quantity of soiling, the quantity of bacteria, and the risk associated with that. It's also dependent on what the procedure is, the level of soiling, and even on the individual patient, and depending on their personal biome. Growth, yes, it will happen, but it is contained within a sealed pouch and therefore presents a low risk. The pack is then only opened in a controlled environment in the decontamination area. So again, lower risk because it's being controlled. The key points associated with the reprocessing, although we test the Humipak moisture retention for up to a week, we always recommend that the contents are reprocessed as soon as possible after use. The person opening the pack should wear appropriate PPE, and that will normally be based on a risk assessment by the user, but would probably include mask or face shield or goggles, gloves and a gown. And we always recommend that when you open the pack, it should be cut open away from the body. So either at the furthest end from the body, or if it's a big pouch, then at the side of the body, which just ensures that any possible plume of airborne bacteria when the pack is opened is not directed straight at the user. And overall, it's a case of risk balance. So you have potential exposure to one individual who is trained in the opening of the product and has the correct PPE against the potential wider exposure or less effective decontamination and the associated infection risk with that. So a summary really of benefits. So the primary function is to prevent the drying of soils, and in some territories that means compliance with guidelines. It provides contamination of the biohazard, as we've just discussed, offers a time saving to users, and has the ability to retain any loose fluids in the pack and not allow them to be spread into the environment. It's easy to use, so just requires a small quantity of water and not any chemicals. This avoids compatibility issues with some instruments, and is also easy to seal with the self-adhesive strip. So the current Humipak range consists of a number of sizes that are designed for use with trays. So the DIN range of trays and baskets, small trays with the smallest size. They were the original 4 sizes. We then introduced the size specifically for endoscope trays. And then more recently, the new additions are for use with robotic instruments. We currently have 2 sizes that are for a single arm or forearm. These have additional features which help to keep the distal tips of the instruments separate and protected, while still allowing the free movement of water vapor within the packs. So that concludes my presentation. As Martina mentioned, happy to take some questions and answer those for you later.
Thank you very much, Jim. It was very interesting presentation, lots of information, a lot of variable information about how to handle Humipak, what are the benefits of Humipak. So thank you again. We can continue with Tarek presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Martina. And thanks for everybody joining us for today's presentation. Thank you, Jim, for a very nice and thorough presentation about the technical part about Humipak. And let me introduce myself. My name is Tarek Maali. I'm the Business Development Manager. I'm the founder of Al Ma'athir Drug Store. And the presentation today is for taking you in my journey with Humipak, actually, as we and Westfield have started working together in 2019, and through our dedicated teamwork, we succeeded in placing Humipak as a leading product in Jordan. So the purpose of my presentation is to share the best practice for successfully introducing Humipak in a challenging market using Jordan as a case study. And my agenda, we will go through insights about the strategies we used for market entry, how we got the hospital engaged with the strategies, how, again, we work together with Westfield in a very large scale launching event. And finally, we will discuss some pitfalls and rejections and our strategy, how we overcome these objections. So talking about Jordan market as a very challenging market for Humipak, maybe you know that Jordan is located in the Middle East in a very hot zone. So our political situation is very difficult. We have a very limited healthcare budget due to, you know, that we have a lot of refugees from Iraq, Syria, all these countries. And so our Ministry of Health always and all the time demands for a very cost-effective solution. But I will not go through the technical part that Jim covered during his presentation, but Through our experience, after 5 years of working with Humipak, we reached the conclusion that Humipak is a very dynamic product, which means that Humipak can adapt to various customer needs and different hospital departments. That includes, but not limited to, OR, CSSD, infection control department, quality, endoscopy, cath labs. All these departments might or can get benefit from using Humipak. What have we done? Now I will move to actually the journey that we adopt from day one, working with Humipak. Our strategy was to fully understand Humipak features and benefits from day one, and study all international guidelines and what have been said and told in third-party researches before going to any hospital, so we can tailor this Humipak and putting the initial strategy to get engaged with hospitals. Then, after understanding all features and benefits, we started visiting hospitals to understand what current processes that they are adopting without initially mentioning Humipak or anything about Humipak. So we could build a relationship with key departments such as infection control, CSSD, OR, to identify our opportunities. That was the initial strategy working with the Humipak. Then, after understanding all the processes, understanding first of all Humipak itself, its features and benefits, and see potentiality inside hospitals, we decided to launch a very large scale launching event and inviting all hospitals at once for a big event. And the purpose for that was actually to create awareness and generate interest among hospitals about Humipak. Then the result of that large scale meeting was actually to set up a criteria for selecting pioneering hospitals based on effectiveness and receptiveness of the innovation. And by sitting with all the participants with a very social environment, we could pick some pioneering hospital who would like to participate with us and willing to collaborate in the initial phase of introducing Humipak. And mainly it was Ministry of Health, our biggest account here in Jordan. They were willing to start evaluating Humipak. After that, we start our data analysis and stakeholder meetings. We have a lot of one-to-one meetings with the key influencer, moving from department to department, but practically way of handling the evaluation of Humipak is to start with the infection control department, who can combine all departments together. So my advice to all of you is to start your introductory phase of Humipak with the infection control department. And there you can build a very trust relationship with a hospital stakeholder. For the product evaluation, it is very important that product evaluation is a very, very critical stage. And our advice is never to give samples for the hospitals for evaluation without conducting the evaluation under your supervision, accompanied with educational session. So what we have done, that we have sent head letters from our side describing Humipak features and benefits and where we can use it. And we took an appointment inside the OR to conduct a 10 minutes educational session and application of how to use a Humipak. And we did it for most of the staffs in hospitals. And we follow up with the CSSD department for the processing of a Humipak, what to wear, the PPEs, all these things. It was our under supervision. So as I mentioned, the continuous follow-up and education is a key for success in introducing Humipak to ensure smooth integration of Humipak with the hospital process. And it's also a key for success to addressing any issues or concern raised by hospital promptly. Finally, the evaluation of Humipak and introducing Humipak is not an easy process. You will face a lot of pitfalls and objections, but I can summarize the main common objections that we have faced is that Humipak was received as in the initial stage as a luxury item or time consuming, or there was a cost concerns. And there was also a challenging intra-department challenges between the OR, CSSD, procurement. Those challenges sometimes who will be responsible for the availability of this product, how to for the waste management, how we can handle the waste of Humipak, and we have very tough issues with rusting of instruments and the presence sometimes of pre-cleaning enzymes products inside hospitals. Our advice is to take all these pitfalls and objections seriously. We shared them with Westfield at that time. We discussed our plan. We reassess and reporting to, as I mentioned, to Westfield. We share ideas together, and we took every rejection as a serious issue and referring it as a serious issue. And for as a conclusion, challenging in Jordanian market are remarkable. And again, Humipak is a very dynamic product meeting diverse needs. Effective strategies to leads to success market entry. And my advice is to understand your local market and collaborate with Westfield. Continuous education and final thought is success in Jordan can be a model for other markets. Stay adaptive and persistent. Thank you.